Hi, I'm Izzy Pears and this is my personal development review. In this video I'll be talking about what I wanted to learn and why, what I did to enable my learning and what I learned from this, what my success criteria was, and how I've used what I've learned and how I'll continue to use what I've learned in the future. When deciding what areas I wanted to improve on, I looked at characteristics of a HR professional, both undergraduate and graduate job requirements, and the CIPD professional map. I then related this back to myself and what I knew or wanted to improve on in order to make me what would be a better qualified HR professional. The 4 areas I chose to improve on were my IT skills, leadership skills, teamwork, and professionalism. The CIPD map highlights learning and development as one of the 10 professional areas of HR, focusing on the need to build individual capability and knowledge to meet current strategic requirements. In section 6.30.1, it says a HR professional should be IT literate. This is backed up in many job requirements, such as the job requirements for Airbus and Ferrero industrial placements. As a result of this, I chose to develop my IT skills, specifically focusing on my Excel skills. I set myself 3 targets, which were to learn how to create a macro, a pivot table, and an add-in. Another area on the CIPD professional map is leading HR. Section 2.19.2 focuses on a leader's ability to motivate others and how a HR professional needs to know approaches to engaging and motivating people from all backgrounds. Also, in researching characteristics of a HR professional, being a leader and a motivator came up regularly. From this, I decided to develop my leadership skills, specifically focusing on motivating others. Personally credible is a behaviour highlighted on the CIPD professional map. It says a HR professional accepts and acts on feedback on own performance, reacting appropriately to both constructive criticism and praise. As all HR professionals spend a lot of time working with others and as part of teams, developing my teamwork was essential for me. When improving my teamwork skills, I wanted to specifically focus on giving and accepting constructive criticism. Curious is another behaviour on the CIPD professional map. It says a HR professional should be inquisitive about current issues and developments within the HR community and how they impact their current practice. Having business awareness is highlighted and important on many job requirements, such as the requirements for the ATOS graduate scheme. Because of this, I chose to improve my professionalism by specifically focusing on my commercial awareness of business and HR. To enable my learning of developing my IT skills, I took part in various online tutorials, specifically relating to the targets I set myself, of learning how to create a macro, a pivot table, and an add-in. After watching the online tutorials, I also did some practice using step-by-step guides in order to build my confidence. This was the most logical and informative method I believe there was to improve my IT skills, as it was specific and detailed. As well as the obvious of learning how to create a macro, pivot table, and an add-in, I also learned about new tools in Excel and how Excel can be used beneficially to a business. To enable my learning for my leadership skills, I firstly researched different motivation theories, such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Herzberg's 2-factor theory. After this, as I'm a team leader at work, I decided to set my team 2 targets. The first one was a competition between staff to book the most festive bookings, with the winner winning a meal for 2. The second one had more of a group focus, with everyone that increased their personal upsells by 5% winning a cinema ticket. I decided to put these targets in place as a way of putting what I'd learned about motivation into practice and testing my motivational skills. Looking at data from work from before and after I set the targets, it's clear that I was successful in motivating my team, as there was an increase in festive bookings and most individuals met their targets of a 5% increase. So overall, I learned about different motivation theories and that the motivation techniques I used were successful amongst my team. Also from the morale at work, I believe that I've learned my team best response to group-based targets. Having already decided to focus on giving and accepting constructive criticism to develop my teamwork, I took part in 2 peer assessments with my university groups and 2 feedback sessions, one with one of the members from my university groups and another one with 2 of the fellow team leaders at work. After my first peer assessment at university, I realised that I struggled more with giving it constructive criticism than accepting it. So after this, I decided to do some research into constructive criticism in order to develop my understanding of it and learn how best to give it. This meant that in my second peer assessment, I was more confident with giving constructive criticism. After this, to gain experience in giving more detailed constructive criticism in a more personal situation, I decided to meet up with one of my team members to give each other feedback. I found giving feedback easier in one-on-one situations as opposed to group situations, so I knew this was something I wanted to improve on. This is why I decided to meet up with two fellow team leaders at work in order to gain confidence with giving and accepting constructive criticism in a group situation. Overall, from what I carried out, I learnt more about the purpose of giving constructive criticism and the best way to give constructive criticism. I also gained confidence in giving and accepting constructive criticism, both in one-on-one situations and group situations. In order to enable my learning of commercial awareness for my professionalism development, I did three main things. I signed up to the CIPD monthly newsletter to be updated with the latest HR news and developments. I started reading the newspaper on the train to university, so this meant 3 times a week I was being updated with the latest global news. And finally, I began checking the BBC News app regularly, so I'm constantly being updated with the main news. On the BBC News app, there's also a My News section, in which you can filter news topics. I filtered mine to business news, so that when needed I could skip directly to business-related news. Overall, from this, I'm constantly learning about the latest news, whether this is global news, business-related, or HR-related. For my IT development, I'd set myself 3 goals. To learn how to create a macro, a pivot table, and an add-in. So my success criteria was simply to meet these goals. I knew I had met these goals when I could confidently and independently create each of these. It was easy to see if I was successful in motivating my team, as I could just compare the data from before and after I'd set my targets. Therefore, that my success criteria was to see improvements in the data, as this would show if I was successful in motivating others. So as there were improvements in this data, I knew I had successfully motivated my team. My success criteria for giving and accepting constructive criticism was really just to gain experience in doing so. I believe this is something I will develop throughout my HR career, but participating in 2 peer assessments and 1 individual feedback session along with a group feedback session is a good first step. My success criteria for commercial awareness was really based on my knowledge of business and HR related news and my ability to engage in conversation about it, whether this was with a tutor in the seminar or in more casual day-to-day conversation. As the business world is constantly developing and the news is constantly changing, I believe this is a more ongoing target for me. However, when I'm reading a CIPD newsletter or the BBC News app, I know I'm in the process of achieving my learning. Although the IT skills I've developed aren't relevant to my life currently as I don't need them in my current job, I know they'll be necessary for my career in HR, both in my placement year and once I've graduated. I also believe when I have a job in HR, I'll continue to develop my IT skills and Excel skills. The motivation skills and techniques that I've developed are currently beneficial in my role as a team leader. However, I believe I'll continue to develop them in any leadership-based role, whether this is a HR role or otherwise. After gaining experience in giving and accepting constructive criticism, I'm able to use this whenever I work with others, as well as personally when I'm looking at ways to develop myself. I also believe that this is something I'll use often throughout my HR career and therefore will continue to develop it. For example, carrying out appraisals. After developing my commercial awareness, it's helped my understanding of business-related problems talked about in university seminars, as I'm now able to relate them to real-life situations that I've read about in the news. In the future, I also believe my commercial awareness will help me during job interviews when asked business or HR-related questions. In conclusion, I believe I have enabled my learning successfully and effectively. I have achieved my success criteria set to myself, and I believe I will continue to use and develop my learning to help me become a better HR professional.